Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Welcome to Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, our daily reading Srimad Bhagavatam class. We are continuing reading Srimad Bhagavatam, fourth canto, chapter 19, King Prithu's 100 horse sacrifices. So today we'll recite from slok number 9, and before reciting, we'll recite Mangalacharan. We'll continue our uh, reading class. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naran Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayo Mudiraye नष्टप्रायेषु अवद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भुक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी मुखं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं निरतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम् नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिचारु स्वामिनिति नामिने स्निग्धचेतसुप्रणीत वाग्मिनां चरसाप्युतम् प्रभुपादगतो प्राणानौमि भक्तिचारुपदम् नमोऽयं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे Hare Krishna. So you can see Srimad Bhagavatam, fourth canto, 19th chapter, King Prithu's 100 horse sacrifices. So we'll recite. Sindavo Ratnanikaran Girayo Anam Chaturvidam Upayanam Upaja Jahru Sarveloka Sapalaka. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: King Prithu was presented with various gifts from the general populace and predominating deities of all planets. The oceans and seas were full of valuable jewels and pearls, and the hills were full of chemicals, full of chemicals uh, and fertilizers. Four kind of edibles were produced profusely. Purport: as stated in Isa Upanishad, this material creation is supplied with all the potencies for the production of all necessities required by the living entities, not only human beings, but animals, reptiles, aquatics, and trees. The oceans and seas produce pearls, coral, and valuable jewels so that fortunate, law-abiding people can utilize them. Similarly, the hills are full of chemicals so that when rivers flow down from them, the chemicals spread over the fields to fertilize the four kinds of foodstuffs. These are technically known as charvia, those edibles which are chewed, leja, those were licked up, chusya, those which are swallowed, and peya, those which are drunk. Prithu Maharaj was greeted by the residents of other planets and their presiding deities. They presented various gifts to the king and acknowledged him as the proper type of king by whose uh, planning and activities everyone throughout the universe could be happy and prosperous. It is clearly indicated in these birds that the oceans and seas are meant for producing jewels, but in Kali Yuga, the oceans are mainly being utilized for fishing. Sudras and poor men were allowed to fish, but the higher classes like the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas would gather pearls, jewels, and coral. Although poor men would catch tons of fish, they would not be equal in value to one piece of coral or pearl. In this age, so many factories for the manufacture of fertilizers have been opened. But when the personality of Godhead is pleased by the performance of yajnas, the hills automatically produce fertilizing chemicals which help produce edibles in the fields. Everything is dependent on the people's acceptance of the Vedic principles of sacrifice. Text 10. इति चाधुक्षजे शस्या पृथोस्तु परमोदयम् आशुयन् भगवान् इन्द्रा प्रतिघातम् अचीकरत्. Translation: King Prithu was dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, uh, who is known as Adukshaja. Because King Prithu performed so many sacrifices, he was superhumanly enhanced by the mercy of the Supreme Lord. King Prithu's opulence, however, could not be tolerated by the King of Heaven, Indra, who tried to impede the progress of his opulence. Purport: the Prabhupada said that in this verse there are three significant purposes expressed in the words Adokshaja, Bhagavan, Indra, and Pritho. Maharaj Prithu is an incarnation of Vishnu, yet he is a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. Although an empowered incarnation of Lord Vishnu, he is nonetheless a living entity. As such, he must be a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although one is empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is an incarnation, he should not forget his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Kali Yuga, there are many self-made incarnations, rascals, who declare themselves to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The words Bhagavan Indra indicate that a living entity can even be exalted and powerful as King Indra. For even King Indra is an ordinary living entity in the material world and possesses the four defects of the conditioned soul. King Indra is described herein as Bhagavan, which is generally used in reference to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this case, however, King Indra is addressed as Bhagavan because he has so much power in his hands. Despite his becoming Bhagavan, he is envious of the incarnation of God Prithu Maharaj. The defects of material life are so strong that due to contamination, King Indra becomes envious of an incarnation of God. We should try to understand, therefore, how a conditioned soul becomes fallen. The opulence of King Prithu was not dependent on material conditions. As described in this verse, he was a great devotee of Adokshaja. The word Adokshaja indicates the personality of Godhead, who is beyond the expression of mind and words. However, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears before the devotee in his original form of eternal bliss and knowledge. The devotee is allowed to see the Supreme Lord face to face, although the Lord is beyond the expression of our senses and beyond our direct perception. Text 11. चरामेना स्वमेधिना यजमाने यजुष्पतिं वैने यज्ञपशुं स्पर्धान् अपोवाह तिरोहिता. Translation: when Prithu Maharaj was performing the last horse sacrifice, Ashwamedha Yagya, King Indra, invisible to everyone, stole the horse intended for sacrifice. He did this because of his great envy of King Prithu. Purport: King Indra is known as Shatakratu, which indicates that he has performed 100 horse sacrifices. Asumedha Yagya, we should know, however, that the animals sacrificed in the Yagya were not killed. If the Vedic mantras were properly pronounced during the sacrifice, the animal sacrifice would come out again with a new life. That is a test for a successful Yagya. When King Prithu was performing 100 yagyas, Indra became very envious because he did not want anyone to excel him. Being an ordinary living entity, he became envious of King Prithu and making himself invisible He stole the horse and thus impeded the yajna performance. Text 12. Amatrir Bhagavan Akshat Twara Twaramanam Vihayasa Amuktam Iba Pakhandam Yot Adharme Dharma Vibhrama. Translation: when King Indra was taking away the horse, he dressed himself to appear as a liberated person. Actually, this dress was a form of cheating, for it falsely created an impression of religion. When Indra went into outer space in this way, the great sage Atri saw him and understood the whole situation. Purport: the word Pakhanda used in this verse is sometimes pronounced Pasanda. Both of these words indicate an impostor who presents himself as a very religious person, but in actuality is sinful. Indra took up the saffron colored dress as a way of cheating others. The saffron dress has been misused by many impostors who present themselves as liberated persons or incarnations of God. In this way, people are cheated. As we have mentioned many times, the conditioned soul has a tendency to cheat. Therefore, this quality is also visible in a person like King Indra. It is understood that even King Indra is not liberated from the clutches of material contamination. Thus, the words amuktam, iva, meaning as if he were liberated, are used. The saffron dress worn by a sannyasi announces to the world that he has renounced all worldly affairs and is simply engaged in the service of the Lord. Such a devotee is actually a sannyasi or liberated person. In Bhagavad Gita 6.1, it is said, अनाश्रिता कर्म फलं कार्यं कर्म करोति या स सन्न्यासी च योगी च सा निरग्निर्न च क्रिया. One who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obliged is in the renounced order of life, and he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no work. In other words, one who offers the result of his activities to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually a sannyasi or a yogi. Cheating sannyasis and yogis have existed since the time of Prithu Maharaj's sacrifice. This cheating was very foolishly introduced by King Indra. In some ages, such cheating is very prominent, and in other ages, not so prominent. It is the duty of a sannyasi to be very cautious because as stated by Lord Chaitanya, Sannyasira Alpachidra Sarva Loke Gai. A little spot in a sannyasi's character will be magnified by the public. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhyalila 1251, therefore, unless one is very sincere and serious, he should not take up the order of sannyasa. One should not use this order as a means to cheat the public. It is better not to take up sannyasa in this age of Kali because provocations are very strong in this age. Only a very exalted person advanced in spiritual understanding should attempt to take up sannyasa. One should not adopt this order as a means of livelihood or for some material purpose. Text 13. Atrina chodito hantum पृथुपुत्रो महारथा अन्वदावता संक्रुद्धस्तिष्ठातिष्ठति चाव्रवीत्. Translation: when the son of King Prithu was informed by Atri of King Indra's trick, he immediately became very angry and followed Indra to kill him, calling, "Wait, wait." But the words tishta tishta are used by a Kshatriya when the challenges his enemy. When fighting, a Kshatriya cannot flee from the battlefield. However, when a Kshatriya out of cowardice flees from the battlefield, showing his back to his enemy, is challenged with the words tishta tishta. A real Kshatriya does not kill his enemy from behind, nor does a real Kshatriya turn his back on the battlefield. According to Kshatriya principle and spirit, one either attains victory or dies on the battlefield. Although King Indra was very exalted, being the king of heaven, he became degraded due to his stealing the horse intended for sacrifice. Therefore, he fled without observing the Kshatriya principles, and the son of Prithu had to challenge him with the words of Tishta Tishta. Text 14. Tam tam tadra sakritim bhiksha mine dharmam sharirinam jatilam bhasma nachannam tasmai banam namunchati. Translation: King Indra was fraudulently dressed as a sannyasi, having knotted his hair on his head and smeared ashes all over his body. Upon seeing such dress, the son of King Prithu considered Indra a religious man and pious sannyasi. Therefore, he did not realize his errors. Text 15. बाधा निवृत्तं तं भूयो हन्तवे अत्रेरे अचोदयात् जहि यज्ञाहनं तत महेन्द्रं विबुधाधनं धमम्. Translation: When Atri Muni saw that the son of King Prithu did not kill Indra but returned deceived by him, Atri Muni again instructed him to kill the heavenly king because he thought that Indra had become the lowliest of all demigods due to his impeding the execution of King Prithu's sacrifice. Text 16. एवं वन्ये सुता प्रोक्तास् त्वरामानं विहाय सा अन्भद्रवत् अभिक्रुद्धो रावणं गृध्ररथ इव. Translation and purport. Translation: being thus informed, the grandson of King Vena immediately began to follow Indra, who was fleeing through the sky in great haste. He was very angry with him and he chased him just as the king of the vultures chased Ravana. Text 17. So asvam rupam cha tad dhitva tasma antarhita swarat vira swapasum adaya piture agyam upe ivam. Translation: When Indra saw that the son of Prithu was chasing him, he immediately abandoned his false dress and left the horse. Indeed, he disappeared from that very spot, and the great hero, the son of Maharaj Prithu, returned the horse to his father's sacrificial arena. ततश्चाच्चद्भुतं कर्म विचक्षा परमर्षया नामाधेयं ददुस्तस्मै विजितास्व इति प्रभु. My dear Lord Vidura, when the great sages observed the wonderful prowess of the son of King Prithu, they all agreed to give him the name Vijit Vijitaswa. Text 19. उपसिज्जातमस्तीव्रं जहरास्वं पुनर्हरि चाशलायुपतश्चन्नो हिरण्या रसनां विभु. Translation: My dear Vidura, Indra, being the king of heaven and very powerful, immediately brought a dense darkness upon the sacrificial arena, covering the whole scene. In this took away the horse, which was chained with golden shackles near the wooden instrument where animals were sacrificed. Text 20. अत्रेशन्दरसयम् आशा त्वरा त्वरामानं विहाय सा कापलाकत् भङ्गधारं भीरो नैनम् अवाधता. The great Sajatri again pointed out to the son of King Prithu that Indra was fleeing through the sky. The great hero, the son of Prithu, chased him again. But when he saw that Indra was carrying in his hand a staff with a skull at the top and was again wearing the dress of sannyasi, he still chose not to kill him. Text 21. Atrinachoditastасмai sandadhe vishikhamruषा so swam rupam cha tad ditva tastab antarhita swarat. Translation: When the great sage Atri again gave directions, the son of King Prithu became very angry and placed an arrow on his bow. Upon seeing this, King Indra immediately abandoned the false dress of a sannyasi and giving up the horse made himself invisible. Text 22. वीरश्चस्वम् उपादाय पितृयज्ञमथर्व्रजात् तद् अव्याद्यं हरे रूपं जगृर्यन् ज्ञान दुर्बला. Translation: Then the great hero Vijitasva, the son of King Prithu, again took the horse and returned to his father's sacrificial arena. Since that time, certain men with a poor fund of knowledge have adopted the dress of a false sannyasi. It was King Indra who introduced this purport since the time of immemorial. The sannyasa order has carried the Tridanda. Later, Sankaracharya introduced the Ekadandi sannyasa. A Tridandi sannyasi is a Vaishnava sannyasi, and an Ekadandi sannyasi is a Mayavadi sannyasi. There are many other types of sannyasis who are not approved by Vedic rituals. A type of pseudo sannyasa was introduced by Indra when he tried to hide himself from the attack of Vijitasva, the great son of King Prithu. Now there are some different types of sannyasis. Some of them go naked, and some of them carry a skull and trident, generally known as Kapalika. All of them were introduced under some meaningless circumstances, and those who have a poor fund of knowledge accept these false sannyasis and their pretenses, although they are not bona fide guides to spiritual advancement. At the present moment, some missionary institutions, without referring to the Vedic rituals, have introduced some sannyasis who engage in sinful activities. The sinful activities forbidden by the Shastras are illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling. These so called sannyasis indulge in all these activities. Uh, and they eat meat and flesh, fish, eggs, and just about everything. They sometimes drink with the excuse that without alcohol, fish, and meat, it is impossible to remain in the cold countries near the Arctic zone. Uh, these sannyasis introduce all these sinful activities in the name of serving the poor, and consequently, poor animals are cut to pieces and go into the bellies of these sannyasis. Are described in the following verses. Such sannyasis are pakhandis. Vedic literature states that a person who puts Lord Narayana on that level with Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma immediately becomes a pakhandi, as stated in the Puranas. Yastu Narayanam Devam Brahma Rudradi Daivatai Samat Venaiva Bhikshita Sapasandi Bhavet Dhruvam. In Kali Yuga, the Pakhandis are very prominent. However, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has tried to kill all these Pakhandis by introducing his Sankirtana movement. Those who take advantage of this Sankirtana movement of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness will be able to save themselves from the influence of these Pakhandis. So here we'll stop here. From tomorrow we'll recite from uh, text 23, verse 23. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Padit Pavan Srila Guru Maharaj ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Janitai Goshitanat Premanande Hari Hari Bol.